Hi guys, our guest today is known as the mind-body mechanic, aptly named so as he's a certified calligraphy yoga instructor, acupuncturist, and Chinese medical practitioner. He has degrees in human movement and health sciences, which have served him well in his 20-plus career in the martial arts. He has practiced various styles, including Tai Chi, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Wing Chun, but it is Yang Mian that he has most experience in. Coming to us from New South Wales, Australia, please welcome Sifu Sean Davis. How are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, very good, mate. Very good, and thank you for having me on your show. And I'm just a traveler on this journey. You know, we're all students at the same time. Yeah, going very good. How about you?
I'm doing quite all right. Thanks for asking. Hey, Sifu Sean, thank you very much for the time to be here, okay? Because I know you're all the way on the other side of the world, so it must be Sunday morning right now for you. It's Saturday night for me right now.
Oh,
all right, so I know you need to go ahead and carry on with your family day and enjoy your family. That's what Sundays are for. So let's go straight into this interview so I can get out here real quick. All right, so let's get into the first question, which is, no pun intended on that one, sir. Right. First question, how do you get into the martial arts, Sifu Sean?
Oh, look, as a little kid, I watched Bruce Lee movies and was always enchanted by, the early Kung Fu movies, but it wasn't until I was a teenager when I was allowed to sort of go do things a bit more myself that I got into different martial arts, and I liked Chinese systems because of the philosophical aspects about things too. And I got into Wing Chun when I was young with a teacher that used to be a bouncer and a doorman, and flexibly all experiences and combined it with many things. And I found that it was a very good art, but also a lot of it wasn't applied or applicable when we started to do sparring, which was a really good thing. We did a lot of sparring. But then after a period of time, I still sort of yearned for the internal, because when I was like 16, I did a Tai Chi class with an old lady, and it was really for health. I definitely feel energetic aspects about things, and it was a good introduction to Qigong and internal practices. And I yearned for a little bit more. I managed to find a teacher called Master Yang Zhen Hwa, the founder of Yang Mian, the teacher, Anyway, so eventually I went and studied with him, and it was I don't know, the way that a lot of traditional arts, you don't go fully deep straight away. You get given a lot of things, and there's a time where you're proving yourself to some degree, and you're applying the process before you're trusted with a little bit more information. Or you've learned more information from doing the practices themselves, which is probably more the point. So anyway, I trained with him. And while training with the internal arts, I also got sometimes, I saw that like reality, I was into combat at the time, pressure testing is a real thing in terms of combat. And I, gravitated towards systems that, test it in a different way, like Muay Thai, and I went to Thailand for a bit, and I found that also gave me, both external teachings and learnings, but also there's definitely internal components in Muay Thai and other systems. Even other external systems will always have internal aspects. But what I found is over there, the experience from the Yang Mian that I'd had, and when I came back again, I met another teacher who was an old man who was not in the best condition mentally or even physically. But when I went to learn from him, he certainly showed me how his position, his structure, his knowledge of movement could make the power that I had, the speed that I had, nullified. And eventually I studied with his teacher, Grandmaster Lawrence Lee, and he gave me very much a good framework in how to understand structure, human movement, and he broke it down in terms of things like fulcrums, inertia breakers. He was also a very brilliant teacher as well. But the great thing, again, coming back to the Yang Mian, it's a system that is not necessarily the techniques, but more the way it changes your body in movement. and it's more, a form of alchemy. And a lot of these internal systems, they're changing the body through, releasing, opening up things like fascia. I mean, now the West is catching up, and we understand that, fascia is a very powerful thing, that we've got, a gut-brain connection, and there's a second brain, and the dantian is, the idea of a dantian. So anyway, I always found that system just kept my joints really healthy. It kept me working on a level that was sustainable. And I've noticed a lot of people that have trained in other systems, they end up quite broken. And I noticed my teacher and the other students that start the training system, their joints, their ligaments, their ability to be fluid in old age and move well. It was good. And I think that comes down to the fact that it's a system, it's like a way of life. And a lot of the other components that exist within that system are very good for their health. There's the Qigong, things that are like silk reeling, which again are connecting different pathways in the body, opening up pockets so that we can breathe deeper and, access more of our body. And they're mutually beneficial, the health aspects, the movement aspects, and it can be applied to martial arts, it can be applied to dance, it can be applied to all sorts of things. So I really found that it was more of the engine as opposed to the way that you drive the vehicle. But I still have always liked looking at other systems and how they drive. They all have their modus operandi when they're trying to apply technique, whether it's through different structures, whether it's through the concept of having guards or no guard, the concepts of striking or grappling, they're all beautiful things to look at. And I think the great thing is internal practices can be applied to them more like the engine, more like the engine changing. I've got a very good friend, Shane Madigan, very good teacher in Chen style Tai Chi, and I met him in a push hands tournament. Very, very, very good. And he learns all techniques from different systems, but what he does is he applies the Tai Chi mechanisms and structure into things like grappling, striking. And the interesting thing is it's also very sustainable. It's not something that he's got a good longevity about him as well. So I think, the practitioners I know that practice internal arts tend to be healthy, tend to move and use more of their body at one time. But what technique is applied, that's a different story altogether, and I like exploring other systems that apply technique and movement, but using the engine from Yang Mian is also, another thing together. But it also has a disposition, because a lot of our movements are based on fluidity and continuous. It's about being continuous, that mean that they lend themselves to movement. And then, say, for example, I've done my Muay Thai, I've done boxing, I've done systems that are very square, that are very structured. But once you start applying the engine, there's more circular things that naturally seem to start to occur. But yeah. And so at the moment, I've just had a student from Belgium training. We've had a good last 3 months intensively training. And then I've actually just had a little bit of a break now for the last week, and then coming back into it, and it all seems to be redigesting. So it's like a process where some of the movements we do it over and over and over and over again, but you're still learning from the same base fundamental movements. And, one of our most fundamental movements is a blood moving exercise that, opens up all the joints and the hips and builds momentum in the body. And it's the first exercise you do, but it's also an exercise you do 20 years, 30 years down the track. But the benefits are, continuous, because you're always learning about your own movement and how you can, build more momentum, be more efficient, see the connection between your mental state and your movement, and feel those things you can go deep into one thing. I remember you were asking a question, you were going to ask it about what's the most difficult thing about Yang Mian. So Yang Mian is a system of, Mian Chuan would be definitely, deep within Master Yang Zhen Hwa system, Yang Mian Chuan. That's pretty much what it is. But he's also had the time to develop deeply here and incorporate other styles, Xingyi, Bagua. I know he's the kind of man that incorporates any natural movement if he's got the opportunity, because he's intelligent and always learning how to apply the engine he has with, different ways of movement. And so Mian Chuan's definitely within that system, but What characterizes this system is a few movements, base movements, where you develop fluidity, and then a lot of systems, internal systems called Fajing, explosive power. And the Fajing within Master Yang, and again, I would travel, meet a lot of people who did martial arts, and I always had an open mind and like to play with people and learn from people from all walks of life. But I'd never met someone that actually, when they use their Fajing, you can hear an audible bass power noise. There's a few movements that we develop bass power, and it's again explosive movement that opens up it's ballistic, that opens up your fascia through rapid movements, but they use ballistic movements, and also pressure from, intra-abdominal pressure, maybe if we use Western anatomical terms, combined with fascia, combined with stretching it and releasing it. But the noise that can be heard from it and can be felt within your body is like very unique. And I haven't found any other systems that have the same thing. Although I know Tai Chi has, they do have Fajing, but it doesn't have the same sound or resonance in the body being played like a drum, which is interesting. Not to say that there aren't other systems that probably know these things. So the thing about it is, we do a lot of movements that move blood continuously, and the blood's continuously being centrifuged. And I don't want to get too esoteric, but anything that's centrifuged, anything that's spinning creates an electromagnetic field. That's just on an energetic level. But also, just like when you spin water, and if you spin water, you stop spinning it, the water doesn't stop spinning. It's still moving on the inside. And when we spin water inside our body and we move it continuously, what happens is our blood is circulating and percolating. We're infusing oxygen-rich blood because we're breathing deeply into the abdomen, while we're sending it to the extremities, oxygenated, so the red blood cells, the white blood cells are sent out. We utilize internal concepts like, your state of mind, being happy, which is probably, again, that's again that question you wanted to ask at the end, and I think that's probably that's going to be the secret to any martial art at the end of the day. But being able to be happy, being able to be calm, being able to regulate your nervous system at the same time as deeply oxygenating the system, and also the movement that we do changes the tendons. There's multiple ways to change your tendons. There's the tendon changing classics. There was the idea that we can change our body through certain movements and stretching and opening. And it can be pretty esoteric, but on a mechanical level, we make our tendons thicker through some of these snapping movements, but we also stretch them and open them through other movements that are usually spiral based in nature, which kind of wring out, all the spiral stuff that also comes from things like Bagua, a beautiful art. I really love Bagua and see how that's influenced my teacher at the same time. It's some of these things you got to piece, like it's been an interesting thing. My teacher has not always been an explicit teacher, but an experiential process. It's been giving me exercises, and the reality is most of the time when I do what he's been giving me to, the process of what I need to do, I end up coming back to him and go, hey, Master Yang, this is what happened to me. This experience happened here. I felt this movement here. And that's when the next exercise tends to appear, because we're ready, because we've already done what we've been given. And it's quite interesting. A lot of people are seeking, secrets. And I certainly believe from my experience with internal teachers that there's certain principles and methods that can have amazing transformation in the human body. And some of them are kept secret. And that's for traditional reasons. And I got mixed opinions on that, because sometimes these traditions might die if they're not maintained. And, but sometimes you need to, there's a good reason you have to have good character. There's a great thing about Chinese martial arts, the concept of Wu Dai. And I think as long as people incorporate that concept of having good character, that's a great thing in any martial art. And that's definitely something that the internal Chinese, cultural practices have. So I think the thing about Yang Mian that makes it very unique is it's a system of alchemy, but it's not like, I know I've done my Tai Chi work where I do a lot of standing meditation, softening, learning to relax and soften parts of the body, learning to fill up the lower part of my body, learning to use the structure through melting over time. And that's very grounding. What Yang Yan tends to use is more the element of water, I guess to say. It's very much based on movement of water, and being continuous. I still have a few students that train, like some of them train MMA, some of them train boxing, some of them train Muay Thai, and I love also playing with them and seeing how my body works with those sorts of systems. But what I'm definitely finding is the feedback is that they're more resilient, they recover quicker, they're able to generate more power into their movement. And I think you asked the question, there's similarities and differences between other systems. A lot of them have similar principles, and your mind state affects all of them. Mindset is something universal. And we've definitely found doing some of these practices like still body, we have it seems external to some people, but it's very much internal, like a still hand. So iron palm can be considered external if you're really, deforming your bones. But we've got an internal iron palm or steel hand because there's the concept of flexibility. And cotton fist, Mian Chuan means cotton fist. And the idea of steel, wrapped in cotton, the softness about it, but there's also a hardness that's flexible, underneath. And we've been experimenting in groups, and it's interesting, the proverb, by yourself you can go faster, together you can go deeper. And with this practice, we have a lot of partner exercises where we use each other, condition each other, but not just the external stuff where you're conditioning tendons and muscles, but more conditioning like cavities and, again, like with the fascia, so that we can build pressure in the body like a tire. So, if it was external, you hitting concrete, sure, but concrete versus concrete will break over a period of time. Whereas, when you develop like a tire, a sledgehammer hits a tire and it will bounce off. And that's our approach to steel bodying, which systems like Baji have. A lot of Baji Chuan has a lot of work where they hit each other, hit trees, and I know it's been incorporated in a few other internal styles. I've even saw sumos have a system where they use a pole as well, and probably have similar roots back in the day, whether it's through Mongolia or other places like that. But we've been experimenting with these sorts of things and finding that mindset, whether we're feeling happy, whether we're feeling expansive, whether we're just breathing deep, or even just simple things like looking over and the very act of turning our head, what impact that has on things like our power. So, when you train in a group in internal practices, there's also something that can come out that's very much observational and experiential. But by yourself, you can go very fast. And one of the difficult things that's always been said about Mian Chuan, whether it's Yang Mian or Mian Chuan in general, is it's not for everyone. And I'd say Yang Mian is for everyone, but not everyone is for Yang Mian, because we have a lot of movements that you're going to do over and over again. The first day you might do one movement, 10 minutes on one arm, 10 minutes on the other arm. And as you develop, you might get to a point where you do a longer period once you're conditioned, and then you just have to keep doing it. You just keep doing it, and it's like you're stirring the water continuously. And eventually, there's a thing called biodynamics, and what they do is they stir water, and they build this microbe-rich fertilizer. And what happens is they notice after they spin for half an hour, they take the spoon out, then they put it back in after a minute after the water stopped, but the water still has the same momentum. It builds up the momentum, so water has memory. It's a concept that, Masaru Emoto, like a scientist, has explored that on a molecular level, or even our intentional water. But the fact is, like, water has fluid dynamics, water has memory, and we're also hydraulic. That's one of the things that's applied in, I think, Master Yang systems, like a hose. So because we've we've got this water that's continuously moving. It's like a hose that's coming from the center. We build pressure. We build pressure via developing it through certain exercises. And eventually those exercises then get articulated through things like the Fa Jing. And then what shape you want to apply that Fa Jing is now a different question. And so there's a few boxers. There's like, I know Lucas Brown, he's a heavyweight boxer. He's a bit older now, but it enabled him to actually fight as a heavyweight into his later years, just after stepping into it, like in the latest. But he did a lot of steel hand. He did a lot of Fa Jing and just punch power with one of our instructors. And you can see people like Costa Zoo, his family have used steel iron palm. He learned from Lawrence Lee, actually, a long time ago. And you can see that these, you asked a question, what would be a good way to see these martial arts survive? What was the other question? What was that question you asked, Mark?
Yeah, that question, we're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. But before we get to that question, though, Sifu Sean, there's one thing I wanted to ask you, since we're on the subject of Yang Mian, right?
Yep.
How would you describe it to someone who's never seen it before, right? Because in my honest opinion, I saw a couple of your videos when you're demonstrating Yang Chuan, and it's a lot of elbow. I'm seeing a lot of elbow strikes, and in that short movement that you showed, I saw a lot of as you said, the Fa Jing with the elbow going out here and coming back. So
yep.
how would you describe it?
Yeah, that's the elbow system, and Yang developed his own elbow system to apply Fa Jing into. He's made 36, but he teaches usually around 12 major movements in the elbows. And that's definitely a large characteristic of students like myself, and maybe the early days of people use it. And that's something he's developed. And then again, me training a little bit of Muay Thai, I feel like I've tried to apply the same applications I've learned from a teacher that taught me some movements. But I think, again, what characterizes Yang Mian is the release of energy through ballistic fluid movement. And you can see we all learn the similar ingredients, like the students from the system. And so there's a fluidity that comes, but everyone's got different experiences. Everyone has a different body. Everyone has a different way of expressing. You often see it be expressed slightly different, but the commonality would be fluid. A lot of people, it's interesting because if you actually with someone with Yang Mian, if I go into a bathroom, you can hear the bass power. I do it on video, and you can't hear the bass. I'll see if I can get some. Can I get some here? Well, it's here. That's the floor in the background, but can you hear that noise on the elbow?
No, I can't.
So you can't hear it on the elbow, but if you got like a person on the street.
Okay, so is it like a pop or no?
So people look at this and they go, what? There's usually a big exclamation mark and a question, what the hell was that? What are you doing? And that's again what got all of these people in the early days. And with Yang Mian, all of these people have never been exposed to a system like this. We had a lot of really strong martial artists from all different systems back in the early day when Master Yang used to teach martial arts intensively. And he's moved away more towards health, probably for many reasons, and a lot of less trouble. Sometimes the martial arts, when it's serious and it's about combat, can attract certain characters. So I think he's definitely moved towards health. But all these big, strong, tough, big boys in Australia, there's big, tough boys over in Australia. What amazed them about this system is the power. So it's got a very powerful component, and it can be seen, heard. For you to hear it, I have to go into like a room that's sort of insulated, but around any other human being, they hear it, and it's like a drum. Just like when you get like a cloth and you make it taut, it'll make a boom noise. And so that's what's happening in the body. It's the fascia and it's the connective tissue, along with deep, being filled with air that expands and makes like a noise like a drum, like a golden bell almost, you know. So that's definitely a unique characteristic of Yang Mian. And it's this called base power. It's called base power, but it's fudging, you know, at the end of the day. But it's fudging that you can see. You can also feel it in your body. There's been a few people in the system that have trained it maybe too intensively and not developed the right way. And it can be a process that you've got to study the right way, or there can be injuries, for example. But if you do it correctly, it's something that opens up and stretches again and changes your fascial pathways and makes your tendons thicker. And these movements that I've learned have been taught to Olympic swimmers, Tora Bright, the gold medalist in snowboarding, many athletes from many walks of life, and it's improved their movement. So it's about, you know, building more momentum and greater articulation through your spine, through your joints. Yeah. And within it, there are different systems. So there's base power, there's freestyle. Freestyle is about not being constrained to a specific movement necessarily. And you'll find that freestyle is something that could be, I've got another system that I like training with, which is Lawrence Lee's system, because he taught a lot of structure and control, which is driving the movement. But the reality is life can be very chaotic. And if you also are in a situation where you're able to operate without having to think, it can be very useful. Wu Wei, you know, the idea of thinking without thinking. And the Yang Mian system is incredibly good at being able to move without thinking. You're letting your body go. You're letting it sort of let go to its natural intuition. And again, these base movements that we do that are very fluid and continuous, the body is naturally designed to move in spiral and circular manners. You know, all our bones spiral. You know, even when we breathe, air spirals in. We live in a spiral galaxy, photons, electrons spiral. So, you know, these movements are natural for the body, and they also tend to have good benefits like building synovial fluid. You know, synovial fluid protects our joints. When we, you know, open and we're loose and we're moving and we're also breathing deep, it has a very profound effect on connecting us, you know, on a deep level. And, you know, but I think Yang Mian, it's interesting, and it needs to get out there a little bit more. There's a lot of powerful teachers out there. There's some senior instructors in the system that are absolute, like, you know, cosmic octopuses in the terms of their movement and power. And I train a lot with big boys around the town, and I'm maybe 75 kilograms, but I've developed my internal strength, and I can run into big boys with a steel body. And that's what makes them want to come and train the system. That's what makes them, because they see a little guy being able to generate a lot of power and force. And I know some other instructors that have, you know, they're working very humble jobs, but they've put a lot of hours into training, 9 hours a day. Some of them have put some, you know, real time in. And like, you know, I think that's the thing with internal arts. People put serious amounts of time into it. They can yield powerful results. You know, a lot of sometimes practiced, you know, as a hobby, but, you know, in order to get good, you need to put some time in. And yeah.
That's very true. So speaking of that, Sifu, right? Knowing that Kung Fu is a term that literally means a skill acquired over time, right? Leads me to a question. What do you think, right? Or what do you feel is the hardest part of developing one's Kung Fu?
Well, I mean, the hardest part, again, is consistency and persistence. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And again, with Yang Mian, what makes it not for everyone is we do some fundamental movements over and over and over again, and the mind tends to wander. I want to do new things and do something over there. And even my own teacher used to reprimand me, telling me that I flicker too much from one thing to another, because if you get one thing right properly, it can have very powerful results as opposed to doing many things not right. And within Kung Fu, there's a lot to do, and you find the better you get, there's more to do. There's more movements, and you actually still have to spend more time to get better. So, being able to be persistent, and I know Mike Tyson said, do the things you hate until you love them. And, with these things, being able to play, being able to have fun, being able to enjoy what you do is essential to get past that difficulty, because otherwise you taste a lot of bitter before you get to taste the sweet. And if you're tasting the bitter and you don't see any end and you don't see any results in the beginning, or they plateau, people can get disheartened, they can stop. And some of these results will manifest themselves after doing 6 months intensively, maybe 3 years intensively, maybe 10 years it takes for some things to really, depending on the person, depending on their time, depending on their understanding, it can take a while for these things to develop. And if you give up too early, you never get to see the sweet. So being able to be persistent. And in our system, like, I know some of the system has been modified for the Westerner because they don't like doing one movement that's incredibly bitter for 1 hour and then doing that every day and coming back and smiling again. But, a smile is probably very important. And again, I'll come back to that later down the track. There's a few principles I use, like 1, fun, 2, shoe, which is like connect to your feet, 3, be able to be grounded by sinking, 4, your core, which is your dantian, 5, alive, being able to feel energy around, 6, feeling thickness, being able to expand your consciousness, expand your awareness of movement, feel how that feels when you hit something, feel how that feels when you're playing with, structure or push hands, for example, or wrestling, or any of these. So there's different concepts, but I think 1, again, is super important, have fun, and you can enjoy the things that are bitter, and you can have fun with them, then those difficult things can be surpassed over a short amount of time and a long amount of time. And that's when the results come. And then you get heartened and you can really have fun.
All right. Very good. So now we're going to move on to that question you had actually you had alluded to earlier, right? Which would be, now, if you could teach the new generation of martial artists only one thing, what would it be?
Well, from that previous question, have fun, play. But if I was to go specifically from the systems that I study, I think longevity is definitely something I believe is the best philosophy to get better. And I still train some jiu-jitsu, but I train it technically and I train it structurally, so that I get stronger still. I'm getting stronger. I'm not getting injured, and I'm getting better technically over a period of time. I still train Muay Thai. I still kick stuff, but I do it without risking myself to get injured. I do it in a point where I spar with in place that I've had my sparring before, but I think I do it now in a place with sustainability. But then with the Yang Mian, incorporating that, it would be do things like, that's, the question is, there's a few base movements that we have in that system, and it would be like, do them every day and smile for 3 hours. That's for me and people that want to go down that path of like developing strong internal cultivation in that system. But within all of them, if you're having fun and you're playing and getting better and you're getting stronger, you're getting more fluid, and you're able to apply people that are good training partners, because I think good training partners are super important. If you can have a good training partner that's someone that will help you get better, will test you, but also make you improve, that has good intention. And these things help you grow together as an individual. And I know with the group that I've been training recently, we've all had this sort of energy about us. We're all getting stronger. We can feel that no one's getting injured, no one's getting damaged, and in fact, like, we're getting stronger as a result of it. I used to do hand, iron palm, with more of a combat orientated psychology, and I found that it affected me energetically. I wasn't as happy, and I was a little bit more, maybe why, I don't know, maybe it's activating my kidneys a little bit more. But as soon as I started doing it with the concept of massage, because I also do massage. I'm just making my hands strong, to be strong, and making my friends' hands strong when we're doing partner work with hands, or hitting the bag to have better massage technique. The interesting thing is I found my still hand improved, and we test this with other people, slapping hands sometimes. And I've done it with external practitioners that have deformed hands that break bricks, and they're different systems, and the water beats the rock, and that's a slow period of time, but that's my experience, so to speak. So the intention, if you're with good training partners that want you to develop, you'll also go further. You train hard by yourself, you'll go faster. And then if you both spur each other to go faster and further, you'll develop really quickly. So it's important to have training partners if you want to learn a martial art. And, if you want to develop something that's good for your health and good for movement, you can go really far by yourself. And sometimes you have it yourself. So do that, and then find good training partners and, apply your stuff, learn it, see where its deficits are in the martial sense, and see where its advantages are. And what I'd really like to see is there are a lot of athletes. I've seen high-level martial artists from all different systems use Yang Mian, and they're more powerful, they're faster, they're stronger, they're more resilient. It's a system that can be incorporated to many different types of styles and systems to make you just to have more power and more fluidity. More importantly, because we're moving blood, it's really good for your health. So I think it's a system that will give athletes longevity. I think it's a system that gives people that aren't interested in martial arts longevity, which is also another awesome aspect about it as well. So, as I'm maturing, I still love combat and I still love the art of it, but I know as I grow older, the art of not being in pain and beating disease will be like, the best thing I could ever be able to do. So, if they can both work together, even better, yeah.
Good answer. So I got one more question for you there, Sifu Sean. How can you be contacted?
I could be contacted by email, mindbodymechanic@hotmail.com, or, I've got my mindbodymechanic Instagram page that I share some of my sort of freestyle movements sometimes, or some of the snippets of the training that we do with the group that we're with. I do sometimes train some people online. I think, there's a few exercises that if people incorporated and they did them on a daily basis, again, they let me know what's happening. They let me know what change is happening in their body, which is invariably, I'm throwing further, I'm striking stronger. I feel like my punch is coming out by itself. These are the experience that people have within the system. So I teach online as well, do some group classes. But if you're ever in Australia and come down to Nimbin, we sometimes have little camps where we train intensively for, whether it's a couple of weeks, if some people are around for a couple of weeks, or, last couple of months was really good when we all were training every day and everyone pushed up, and people had a break for a week, and came back, and they've noticed that their powers, expanded significantly. So, yeah. And there's a lot of other, look up Master Yang Zhen Hwa, look up teachers like Tony Tyler. I'd like to, shout out to, there's heaps of awesome instructors in the system all around the place. And there's some in Europe, there's, and it's an experiential system. It can be, really felt quite quickly. It's a rapid system. It was designed for rapid development in power and speed. But, and it's a beautiful art. Very good for your health, makes you feel good. So, reach out if you want to know any more.
All right, no problem. Information for Sifu Sean will be in the description below. Also in the description below is going to be a link for Fei Yu shoes. If you need Fei Yu shoes, go ahead and click that link. Get the best prices and the best styles all at Fei Yu shoes. Sifu Sean, thank you very much for giving me insight into your knowledge.
Pleasure, Mark. All the best.